Do the headlights on your Fiat 500 seem like they have a life of their own? In this video, I'm going to show you how to fix that. So recently I've been noticing a new problem with my Fiat 500. Sometimes when I would park and walk away from it, the headlights would stay on for a little bit and then turn off. I thought that must just be one of those features where it kind of, stays on so you can find your way to the door that I accidentally turned on maybe. One morning, it was completely dead because the headlights never turned off. So I did some looking and I figured out that the culprit was this. This is the body control module. It's located under the dashboard, under the steering wheel. If you take the car to the dealership, they will sell you one of these and then they will have to program it to work with your car and your key fob. If you buy one used off eBay or from a junkyard, you will have to take it to the dealer and have them program it to work with your car. That could cost you hundreds or thousands depending if you get new or used. And the problem in this thing is that relay. So I'm going to show you how to remove this, take it apart, replace two little relays like this, put it back together, and save yourself maybe thousands of dollars. All the parts to do this come in under 20 bucks. So if you're good with soldering, you can easily do this yourself. If you're not good with soldering, you probably have a friend that is, and will maybe work for pizza or beer or something. I work for vanilla Coke if it ever comes up. So let's get started and I'll show you how to do it. Alright, I'm going to give a little lesson on desoldering. The thing I found people have the most trouble with is desoldering, especially when you have several through-hole pins. So I'm going to run over how to do that right now. If you aren't interested, feel free to skip ahead to this time. First, you're going to need a decent soldering iron. Mine is one of these Wellers. Very happy with it, but you can get for, between the $100 to $200 range. Weller has some good ones, Hako has some good ones, Hako, whatever. But I'm an American, so I got Weller. Just kidding. You need a solder sucker. There's multiple varieties. It doesn't really matter as long as it sucks and doesn't suck. Also, it seems counterintuitive, but you're going to want some solder, and you're going to want the stuff with lead. I know the world's moving away from leaded solder, but it's really the best. So if you can still get it in whatever country you're in, get solder with lead. Just don't eat it. All right, so I have you zoomed way in now. For reference, here's a finger. So if you have a small, like a surface mount component, the easiest way to do it is just put on a glob of solder and just go back and forth with your iron. Let's say we had a surface mount here, and you could just kind of go back and forth both sides, and it'll just come right off. When you have 4 or 5 pins going through, it's a little more complicated, and it also doesn't help that this is in a really bad spot for getting at and filming, since we're right on the edge of this plastic here. Now I've got my iron set to about 350C. I know I said I was an American, so I didn't use foreign things like Celsius, but now your tip wouldn't hurt to have a little bit more blunt one here. I have a pointy one, but that's not the one I'm going to want to use today. So first thing I like to do is actually solder the connection before I desolder it. Now if this is lead-free solder on this board, and I suspect it is, the melting temperature is going to be a little bit higher on the solder that came with it as opposed to what you're putting in here. So this will kind of mix it together, lower the melting temperature a little bit, plus it'll help wick the heat of the soldering iron into the joint you want to desolder. Now don't be afraid to let it get hot. You have no chance of hurting anything from heat right here. And then you just want to get right up. And as you can see, that did not work, so we're going to try it again. It might take a few tries, but take your time and get it right. Don't think you're going to be saving yourself any time by thinking, oh, that's good enough, I'll move to the next one, because then it won't pull out. So you have to get every single pin free. If you have one pin hanging up, it's not going to come out nicely. And don't be afraid to get the tip of your desoldering tool on the iron. They use a pretty high temp plastic here. It will melt, but not as easily as most plastics. Now you can see we're still not completely free, so we're going to try this again. We have kind of everything working against us on these solder joints. We have lead-free solder, we have a lot of plane sucking out our heat, and we have something in our way. And then I guess I'll throw in, I have a camera right over my circuit board, which is in my way. Now the alternative method here is to purchase a desoldering iron, which gets hot and sucks on the same tool. Those are great, I love them, I just don't have one. Apparently picked a great one for the tutorial here. Normally I'd be done and having lunch by now. There, that's just about it. I got my heat up to 390 now. I've never had this iron that hot. Now you can kind of see now the pin and the via on the board, and there is black line around the middle. That's a good sign, it means we're almost there, but there is still solder in there. So again, it seems counterintuitive to put more solder in, but right now you're not going to be able to heat up the solder in there without a little dab of solder to wick its way in there and transfer that heat. So that might be clean. I'm going to try this big sucker right next to it. So you can probably see a little line on the edge of there. And it's disappearing, and there it's gone. That's how long it took the heat to transfer over there. So as you can see, desoldering is a skill. It's not one of those things where you buy the solder sucker, you get it hot, you push the button, and you're done. You have to learn how to use the tools. Now if this one was terrible, this one's probably better. I assume that pin was hooked to ground plane. This is just hooked to a little signal trace. So this one should be the easy one. Yeah, got that one first try. You can see black around the pin. So then once you get it to that point, I like to take the hot iron, just push the pin until you can make it kind of click over, then you know it's free. So that one's good. So clearly this is the ground and that's the positive. Yeah, you can see that edge of that solder joint still cold. I've got my iron on 410 now. There, finally. See the black line all around it? That means it's free. This front one's still not there, but now that I've got my heat up, I'm going to take another stab at that. And my iron just dropped from 410 to 383. So I'm watching it go back up to 410. There we go. We got 3 free pins. Now this last one is way back here. I'm not gonna be able to get the soldering sucker on that, but I think that is also a signal pin, so it should be light I'm going to try just heating it up and pulling the relay off the back. There we go. That's an extremely difficult desoldering job. This has a lot of heat sinking built into it. You can see like all these little tiny holes around here. Those are all to sink heat. Those are. Plus you just have the thickness of this board and these big wide traces. This thing was well engineered. It's just a shame the relays don't last longer. I looked up the specs on these relays and the life is supposed to be 1 million or 5 million cycles. I know I have not started my car 5 million times. I'm gonna try to get the rest of these out. Perfect, first try. Let's try to get this fat one. This one might kind of be a nightmare because it's so far underneath this plug. It's hard because I'm really only able to pull the solder off this side of the pin. So what I'm going to try to do now is heat up both of these two pins simultaneously, flood them with solder, and pull the relay out the front. You can see it's tilted now. I just pulled those pins out most of the way. Okay, this one didn't quite get cleaned out, so I'm going to try. There's another method where here we have this chip, we have these two pins. If you heat up these two and pull the relay that way, heat up these two, pull it that way, and kind of work it back and forth, that can sometimes work. Okay, I was able to get it up off the board. Okay, two pins are out. There we go. That was difficult. So I just took the relay apart. I wanted to check the contacts. So the contacts are here and here. And this is what makes that connection. So you can see there definitely is somewhere. Alright, so our relays are replaced. It's not my finest work. I haven't brought my flux remover to the new house yet, so it still kind of looks like an active crime scene, but it will work. So the next thing to address is these headers that used to connect the two boards. So these are a press fit header. They do not use solder. I think the point is that most everything on these boards can be assembled with robots and wave soldering, but if they used a soldering header here, they would have to have somebody hand solder it, whereas with this, they just press it together and it holds. They're not meant to be reused, and I don't like the idea of using these because if I turn on my car a few million more times and these need to replace again, then I'm going to be fighting these dumb things again. I'm going to be replacing with headers that snap together and come back apart. Now I've measured these out. These should be about the same size, and they will allow me to snap these two boards back together, and one day me or someone else can take them back apart and repair it again. The other videos on YouTube say to just reuse these and solder them in. You probably could. It would probably work. It's just kind of tacky. So I'm going to install these new headers, and I will have a link to where to track these down. I actually got much longer ones, but you can break them to any length you need, and I just got these off Amazon. These relays are getting harder to find. A lot of electronics places, they're listed as obsolete, and you have to order from the manufacturer with a minimum quantity order. I found these on eBay. They're out there. I'm thinking of possibly selling on my website 2 relays and 2 of the right size headers as a little kit. I don't have that set up yet. If I have that set up, I'll put a link in the description. Otherwise, you're just going to have to go looking on Amazon, eBay, whatever, the usual suspects, trying to find these parts. So it doesn't really matter which way you put these, but just for the sake of consistency, I'm going to put the pins for both on one board and the sockets on the other board. And if you use this round style pin, I'm not sure if this is what everybody will use, but this section here rests against the board, that little ledge. So they will go in backwards, but they're supposed to go that side down. So it'll be just like that. And then this side will get the sockets. And a good bit of advice, tack these in like each corner, one solder joint, and then make sure you have everything oriented right. You saw how much trouble I had desoldering those relays. You don't want to do that 26 times. And you will find you're going to have the same trouble I had with the heat getting sucked out of the iron. So I've got this turned way up again. I'm at 395 right now, and I'm watching that iron drop. It just dropped to 384. Alright, I've now got each of the plugs tacked in one corner. I'm actually going to snap the 2 boards together before I solder the rest, then I know they're all lined up. Okay, so I'm going to do one side of this, and you'll be able to tell doing this which pins are just going to a signal and which ones are hooked to a plane, because it'll just take a lot more time to get all the heat in so it flows. You'll also notice I'm heating the pin and the board, and then feeding the solder into it. If you just put a glob of solder on your iron and then try to bring it to the board, it won't stick because all the rosin and or flux that's in the solder has already burned off then. So when you do it this way, you're distributing the solder and the flux onto the joint. Whereas if you were to just like load it up like that and then touch, you burned off all the solder, or I'm sorry, you burned off all the rosin or flux, and it's not going to stick anymore. And it's not at all relevant for this, but just in case you're interested, the square pin means that's pin number 1. So if we had a schematic for this board and it said, go to this connector pin 1, it's going to be the square one. Alright, now I'm on the ground. These corner 6 pins are going to a large trace, so it's taken a lot of heat. Alright, here's the completed board. You can see my new headers. If you ever have to replace those relays again, just do that. Let's box it back up. Together a lot easier than it came apart. This job is complete. Let's go put it back in the car. guess that's it. It worked. I did find out that now my battery's dead. It's the original from the car, so it's 10 years that it's been working. So I think I set a pretty good run. But I guess that last final going completely dead was just kind of the last straw for it. So I gotta get a new battery, but the repair worked. The headlights now turn on and turn off. And yeah, it was really pretty easy. So as I said, I'm going to possibly put together little kits so that people can do this repair on their own and not have to chase down all the individual pieces. So I'll put a link in the description if I go that route. If not, sorry, you're just gonna have to search. But I'll try to fill the notes with links, and I'll try to have part numbers flashing across the screen and try to do everything I can to help. But that's about all I got for you right now. Thanks for coming along. See you later.